centerfire rifle cartridges that should have been big time, but disappeared. Why did this happen? We're going to find out on this episode of Ron Spomer Outdoors. Our guest today is Landon.
Hello.
Landon was like third place winner for all-around shooter one time.
Yep.
Years and years ago.
It was a minute ago.
A minute ago. You're not even a minute old yet. You guys, if you don't know Landon, this is Landon. He works with us behind the camera, in front of the camera, does some editing, does some shooting. He's a great guy. We are going to be hunting together pretty soon because he knows the places to go. Great to have you on, Landon.
Good to be here.
I wanted the young guys' perspective on some of these old cartridges, but what I want to talk about today are cartridges that, based on their ballistic performance, should have really been successful. And yet, you've probably never heard of some of these, and I bet you a lot of our listeners haven't heard of them either.
Could very well be.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about those, and I'm going to ask you what you know about them, if anything, just kind of help prove what I'm suggesting here. Right. So let's start with this little guy. Just by looking at it, do you have any idea what that thing is?
It is a rifle cartridge.
You're so good.
Yeah, it looks maybe like a .22 caliber.
Yes, it is a .22 caliber. Does it look like any one that you know very well?
It almost looks like a 220 Swift, but I'm not sure if that's what it is.
Well, good call. Let's do that just to show you how far off you are. That's the 220 Swift.
Well, I was wrong.
Yeah, well, no big surprise, because I had not seen one of these until I finally got it from a friend just this year in the summer. I've been looking for one for a long time, but it's the, drum roll, Winchester's famous 225 Winchester.
Now, what is that?
Exactly. That's the response you get from everybody, including me. And I was even around in the era when this thing appeared. That thing showed up right around, I think they announced it in 1964.
Okay.
And why would they do it? Because Winchester came out with a 220 Swift way back in 1935. And it was incredible. For that era, it was something like 1,000 feet to 1,400 feet per second faster than the next fastest .22 centerfire varmint cartridge of the time.
Yeah,
if you can believe that.
I knew the 220 Swift was up there in the list. The early hot comer varmint round. Yes, yeah. It was the speed. It was the speedy one.
Yeah, I mean this. You go back 1935. Think about it. They had only broken the 3,000 feet per second speed record with the 253,000 Savage in the teens around 1915, I believe. So this was a huge leap forward, especially in the 22s. You have to remember, back in those days, we were still transitioning from the old slow black powder rounds to the high velocity things, because people just didn't want to believe it. The tradition was bigger bullet, it's going to be more successful. But as we got more and more comfortable with smokeless cartridges and lighter bullets and more velocity, everybody began to appreciate that. Not only could you shoot flatter and make it more easy to hit your target, but once that bullet got there, the speed offset the loss in bullet weight. And then that's that old physics formula of double the weight, you double the energy in a moving projectile, double the velocity, and you quadruple the energy in that same moving projectile. And it's a little bit hard to wrap your mind around about it, so I suggest you get smacked by something really fast, and you'll appreciate it. Yeah, so there it was. Now, if the 220 Swift was such a remarkably fast and cutting edge, ahead of its time cartridge, why in the 1960s did Winchester decide to phase it out and introduce this smaller, slower 225?
60s, I know another pretty big .22 cal that came out in the 60s. I have no idea if it's anything to do with it. But there's a little bullet called a .22-250.
Oh, there's the cartridge you're talking about.
Oh, look at that.
And that is a good call, because that is exactly part of this whole program. Even though Winchester came out with this .225, Remington beat them up when they came out with the .22-250 a year later. Now,
really?
Why would the one that came out a year later take over and win the competition? Because, I mean, obviously the .225 is pretty much moribund these days, whereas the .22-250, until just recently with the .22 Creedmoor coming out, that was kind of the top dog. The 220 Swift has long suffered and continues to suffer from a little more sloped cases, you can see there. And sloped shoulders, not the modern 30, 35 degree kind of shoulder issue going on with it. You actually got a little better flat shoulder off this 225, but look at the rim on this thing. See what I'm talking about?
Look at that.
Semi-rimmed. And a rimmed cartridge is just not all that effective in most bolt actions. They tend to hang up a little bit because the rims in a vertically stacked magazine can catch one another and cause some issues. Not a huge thing, but it was enough. But the real reason that the 22-250 beat this one out, what do you think was it?
A little bit of speed and maybe the rifles it was chambered in?
Good guess. The speed, yeah, it might have 50 to 100 feet per second advantage on velocity with it. But it wasn't so much, what did you say about the rifles?
The rifles it was chambered in, who was making what?
Well, at the time, of course, you could have put it in anything, but the 225 Winchester was only ever chambered by Winchester. So you either got a Model 70 or nothing. Whereas the Remington got to be chambered in various Remington rifles plus other folks. I don't know why they decided to adopt it other than this. It was already a popular varminting round. It just wasn't legitimized as a SAMI spec cartridge. So people knew about it already. It was the 22-250. In the 1930s, it was the 22 Watkins and the 22 Air. They had lots of names for them. All the wildcatters were playing around with it. They just took the 250 3000 Savage, necked it down. That's why it's called the 22-250. Right. Went from a 25 to a 22. Yeah, but that's the one that beat it out. That became the hot rod cartridge, beating out both of these from Winchester, which is sad for Winchester, but bravo for Remington. They were smart enough to grab it. And this is what I imagine they did. They're at their, in the plant going, did you see what Winchester just came out with? Oh my gosh, they got the 225 Winchester. What have we got? Got the 222. Well, that's way too slow. What are we going to come up with? So they came up with that. Let's just grab that 22-250, give it our name, and legitimize it, and we'll steal their thunder. And they did.
Right.
Yeah, it absolutely worked. So good. Yeah, that is a cartridge, the 225, based on its ballistic performance, in its shape and everything else, that should have been a real barn burner. But, yeah, because that 22-250 Remington came out hot on its heels and it was chambered in more rifles and all of the rest of it.
There it went.
On away.
Just like that.
Yep. Guys and gals, if you are enjoying our podcasts and our regular videos like this one, discussing cartridges and the sorts of things we do, boy, subscribe to the channel. It really helps out. We're pushing for 600,000 subscribers now. We're getting close. We'd like to break over the hump this end of the year if we could. So please subscribe and let us know if you enjoy this kind of programming, if you would like to see something else. We just aim to please, and we got some young guys with some new insights, and we can cover their views rather than old grandpa's.
There's nothing wrong with his either.
Yeah, if you like the old stuff. So let's go to another category, and this one is going to be the very popular 24 calibers. You recognize that guy?
Now, I think that's a 6mm Remington.
Bingo, you got one. So it's got enough of a reputation that you at least know it.
I also know a guy who rather likes it.
He's cheating. No, that's the 6mm Remington. Now, what can you tell me about that other than you know what it looks like?
That's about it. I think it was maybe the start to 6mm. It was the start to where... Now, I don't know for sure, but it's the start of the 24 calibers, because I think the 243 came a little later in life, and now we got the 6mm Creedmoors.
You're on it. It was the one of the first. It and what you mentioned, the 243 Winchester, those were competition. Once again, Remington and Winchester, middle of the 20th century, those were the two big dogs. And they both came out with these. They were being wildcatted by a variety of wildcatters. So everybody knew they were out there. They just, again, needed to be legitimized. And the 6mm version was then called initially it wasn't called 6mm when it first came out.
243?
No, 243 Winchester. Both of them are shooting a .243 inch diameter bullet. What would Remington have called theirs?
243 Remington?
Close.
I don't know.
They went with one of the cooler names that should have really made it and didn't. The 244.
Oh, okay.
And I've always thought, given the history of firearms, you had the famous 44 cartridge.
Right.
Then you had the 44 Rem Mag, and 44 just seems to be a good number for cartridges. So 244, that should have just, everybody should have glommed onto that one. 243, it's like, what's the 3 stand for? Well, Remington had stolen the 4, I guess, so Winchester had to go with 243. So, but they were both stiff competitors. But based on the look of them, where do you think they came from? They obviously
they both look like a 308, maybe.
Yeah. 308 is this guy right here. All they did was neck it down to 24. But this one's a little bit longer, a little more taper in it. Where'd that come from?
220 Swift? That 220 Swift was a longer tapered bullet.
Yeah. Pretty fair guess. Pretty fair guess, but nope. Can't give it to you.
I couldn't tell you.
For effort. The 757 Mauser.
Oh, I gotcha.
Back in those days, the 757 Mauser was pretty world famous as an adequate hunting cartridge for medium-sized game. Plus, in a bit of an anomaly, one gentleman in Africa was using it to take everything, including elephant. This is your 757.
That's
so all they did with the 757 was neck it down. They may have changed the shoulder a little bit on it. I don't remember. But neck it down to 24 and bingo, you've got a lot of horsepower pushing a much narrower, lighter weight bullet, and they got some pretty significant velocities. In fact, it shoots about 100 feet per second faster than the 243.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, but why is it not more popular?
It'd be more popular in my eyes.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
That's why I have one. It wasn't as much popular because once the 308 Winchester set the standard for short-length actions, as you can see, this guy's just a little bit longer.
Yep.
Yes, it'll work in a short action, but in some, you can't optimize bullet length in it. But at the time, that wasn't appreciated so much as the weight of the bullets that it would shoot.
Okay.
The famous story is that Remington topped out with a 90-grain bullet, and that was their answer for deer hunting. Whereas the Winchester 243 came out with a 100-grain bullet. Well, why didn't Remington just suddenly start loading 100-grain bullets?
Length.
Length was part of it. The bigger part was the twist rate that they put in their rifles. They went with 1 in 12. The 243 was 1 in 10. So the 243 easily handled the day's longest bullet, now 100 grains. Stayed that way for many, many decades. Whereas this one at 90, well, shouldn't have been a big issue. In fact, the 90-grain bullet going 100 to 150 feet per second faster than the 100-grain should have made the 244 Remington the champion. I would have bought it. I did. But a lot of people thought that's not enough bullet weight. There was something magical about 100 grains for a deer. Both of these cartridges were considered to be varmint rounds, coyote hunting rounds, and they could double as a deer setup. Pronghorn, mule deer, whitetails. So guys thought, you got to have at least a 100-grain bullet to be really a good deer cartridge. So the 244 fizzled really quickly, and the 243 became the standard that it is today. And it remains kind of the standard. It might start to lose a lot of its own glamour now that we've got faster, longer bullet 6mm like the Creedmoor.
Yeah.
6mm Creedmoor and some others coming out. But that was kind of the history. And they both came out in 1955.
Oh, really? They came out that similar?
Oh, yeah, same year. Bam. Because I said earlier, they were both already known as Wildcats. It was just, which one are you going to adopt? I don't know why Remington decided they would adopt the based on the 757, but they did. Now, the 257 Roberts, that was another Remington cartridge, and that's probably why, because that one was the neck down 757.
Yeah.
So Remington had a history of using that 757. And to this day, I love the 757 myself. But I also love the 6mm. I never did get into the 25 because the 25 Roberts, 250 Roberts, by that time, the 6mm was already a little bit more famous as a dual-purpose round than the 257, and I went with that. But I've got the 243, and that's a great art setup too. I've yet to meet a pronghorn or a deer that could tell the difference.
Probably not.
Yeah,
I'll tell you, I shot my first deer with a 243, and it definitely didn't know anything.
Didn't know that.
And get this, 90-grain bullet.
No. And
I was a rebel. I was a rebel.
You're just disproving everything. All right. Those were the 6mm. Where do you want to go next?
Let's just keep working up the ladder.
The latter. How about the former? Did we mention a what?
No, I couldn't tell you on that one.
That looks kind of old-fashioned, doesn't it? Look at that round-nosed bullet on top of that guy. What? What?
No clue. It's probably a 25 of some sort, looking at the diameter.
Let me go back to that 6mm Remington. Well, by the way, guys, the 244 Remington got renamed 6mm Remington. After they finally tumbled to their big mistake and decided to compete with the 243, they needed to speed up their twist rate. They went with a 1-9 twist and rechristened this cartridge and brought it out as the all-new 6mm Remington, which
Same
still
thing.
didn't do all that well. It's still a great cartridge, but they just can't capture the market buzz.
But it looks maybe like a 757, and you mentioned maybe a 257 Roberts.
You're on it, partner. There's your 257 Roberts. So you can see the real similarity there. They just changed it from a 24 to 25. That, of course, came out first. The 257 Roberts must have come out in, when did that come out? In the 30s? And that was a Remington as well. So
Okay.
Remington, and was one of the few that Remington didn't call a Remington. Don't know exactly why, but Ned Roberts had been wildcatting that for a long time. So it already had a reputation as the Roberts. So I think that's why they went with it. But there's your 25. Now, remember, back in these days, the earliest 20th century, the 25s were sort of what the 24s became in the middle of the century. It was like a small, fast bullet, really cool. Everybody's got to have one of those for dual purpose. You could do some woodchucks out in the pasture, coyotes if they were a problem, and then use them for deer or pronghorn, that sort of thing. And it was a very effective cartridge. Everybody who shot one loved it. And it didn't really start to lose its shine until this guy came out. That one you probably know.
That looks like a 25-06 if I ever seen one.
Yep, you've seen one, and that's what it is. And now, where's that one come from?
Probably a 30-06.
Yep, pretty simple. 30-06 neck down to 25. That's another old one that the wildcatters were playing around with back in the 20s. And it just hung around until finally Remington once again said, it's so successful, let's grab it. I don't think they did it, though, until 1969.
Really? It was that late?
I think it was. You guys check me on that one, but it seems to me it was 1969 that Remington finally legitimized this 25 Varminter. They called it, what did they always call it? I've forgotten some of the early names for the darn thing, but it had been around for a long time. In the early years, it didn't quite measure up in its ballistic performance to what they predicted it would because they didn't have enough good powders for that much volume with that tiny of a bore. So suffering a little bit. These days, we've got so many different burning rates on our powders that you can really crank this baby up. But it was the fastest 25 except for...
Oh, it's got to be a Weatherby if we're talking fast.
257 Weatherby.
There it is.
And the 257 Weatherby actually did come out long before the 25-06 Remington. That thing came out in the 1940s.
Okay.
That's when Roy Weatherby started all of his big magnums, and this was said to be his favorite. And he took all kinds of big stuff with it, elk and moose and African critters and lots of big game because it was so fast. And that's what he was advertising, 3,600 feet per second. Oh, my gosh.
That's real fast.
Yeah, with a 120-grain bullet, my gosh. So he was just smacking stuff right and left. And he used that to advertise his shock value. Hydrostatic shock is what kills. Unfortunately, to this day, that persists. People think the more energy you put on the target, the more efficiently you kill it, which isn't necessarily true because, as we've talked about before, what do you have to do with that energy?
Cut.
You have to do some kind of damage. You got to put it to work. Cut, rip, tear, hemorrhaging. You know, if you go with just pure energy, well, you can shoot them behind the diaphragm in the belly. Does that kill anything? It absorbs all the energy, but it doesn't kill it.
Nope, you still got to cause the internal bleeding and everything.
Yeah, unless you hit the brain, spinal column, withers forward, that kind of stuff. But poor 257 Roberts, by the time these two teamed up against it, it started to lose its glamour. But you know what really killed it off? Same one that killed off the 6 millimeter.
The 243.
Yeah, because they're close enough, and it was thought to be a little easier to work with on coyotes and things. I don't know, the 25s just kind of started to lose favor to the 24s, and it stayed like that after the 50s. So I don't know. The 25 now they're starting to come on again because you got your 25 Creedmoor.
Yeah.
And there are some more in the works. I predicted a few years ago that this would happen, not because I'm any great Nostradamus of cartridges or anything, but it just seems to me that we had already improved so many different cartridges. We got all kinds of 22s, all kinds of 24s. The 26s really came on strong.
Yeah.
7mm there's enough of those to write a book. So it just seemed to me the only one that they hadn't played around with was the 25.
25s.
Yeah, so they need to come up with one that'll shoot a long, sleek bullet. That's what the 25 Creedmoor does.
Yep.
And some others that are coming down the pike here pretty quickly, I would predict, because everybody wants to get into that same competition.
Right.
And come up with a hot new, whether it's going to be Nosler or Hornady or Winchester or Remington or Weatherby or any of them. Somebody's going to come up with some more. The 25s are getting to be hot again, so watch developments there. But
And I've liked the 25s for a long time. I love that 25-06.
you shoot one,
I've shot plenty of them.
but you don't own one.
Nope.
See, that's the problem. You got to buy them.
No, my dad owns one.
Oh, well, that's close enough.
So-
Keep it in the family. But, guys, if you ever get a chance to pick up a 257 Roberts, do not overlook it, because it's real comparable to the recoil of a 243. And it will kill just as effectively. It's a little more width in your bullet. You're going to get your bullet weights up there. I like the 110 grain rather than 120, but you can use the 117s, 115s, even get down to the 75 grain bullet. Makes for a great varminting bullet in that thing. So it's worth keeping an eye on. All right, who's next?
Probably in the 6.5s.
Okay, I'm going to fool you on this one. Who's that?
Now, it looks an awful lot like an I don't know what it is.
I don't know. The 6.5, I don't know.
I have no idea.
That was a cartridge really ahead of its time.
It looks a lot like maybe the 6.5 PRC.
You were cheating. You were looking again. It does, doesn't it? And that's why it was ahead of its time. You look at those two and you go, well, they're pretty darn close, except for the shoulder angle. Maybe it's shoved back a little more on this PRC, but what's the whole idea? Short,
Fat cartridge.
fat, long, sleek bullet. Short, fat, not a long, sleek bullet. Because back in the 60s when this thing popped up, they didn't have long, sleek bullets necessarily. But they got the idea. Let's get, this is a 7 Rem mag. Same case at 7, just neck it down to 26 and you've got the 264
64.
Win mag. And the 6.5 Rem mag came out a few years later, about 6, 7, 8 years later, mid-60s. And they were trying to produce or reproduce those kinds of velocities in a quick, short little rifle for woods hunting, short action, faster, and all that good stuff. So they were thinking along the same lines as we do these days with the Creedmoor and the 6.5 PRC. Let's get a short, efficient little cartridge in a lightweight, quick little rifle with a short bolt throw and throw those bullets. And even in those days, at least the engineers recognized the high BCs inherently in those 6.5s. At those weights, you got to remember, 140 grain bullet out of a 6.5. Compare that to a 140 grain bullet from a 270 Winchester.
Right.
Well, it's a narrower bullet with the 26, so you're going to have a higher BC. It's going to shoot a little farther, retain a little more energy when it gets downrange. So that's how, even though you have it in a smaller case, maybe started out a little bit more slowly, you're going to catch up and retain more energy, be a little more effective on your target once you get there. But the public wasn't ready for it. I don't think it was. Nobody that in those days was saying, "Oh gosh, did you see the new hot, short, fat Magnum?" No, but they were on the right track. The biggest mistake they made was they put it in short-barreled carbines.
Oh, really? So they're
18.
cutting their speed already.
It was either an 18 or 18.5-inch barrel on this Model 600, and then the Model, I think, 660, when they upgraded a little bit, went to a 20-inch barrel. But they thought of it as that little quick, handy woods carbine, and it just didn't work out because it's got the potential to be a real screamer, but if you cut the barrel back, you can't realize your full potential.
Right.
So these days, of course, with the Creedmoor, and guys are shooting short barrels with those because they want to put suppressors on.
Right.
That wasn't even a dream back in the 60s with this Remington Magnum. And then the downside to this was like, why didn't they just resurrect this one? They tried about 20 years ago. Remington came out with another rifle similar to the original and chambered it for this, hoping that it could revive it a bit. never really did. And I think part of the problem is it was based on the belted magnum. And I don't know why, but the belt gets so much static from so many people.
They're scary.
It's what?
It's scary.
I mean, that's why the RPMs from Weatherby are showing up.
Right.
Why would Weatherby bother making a 6.5 or a 338 Weatherby Magnum when they've already had some? Well, the new ones don't have belts on them. And I think for the 21st century, it's kind of the way you have to go. I don't have a serious issue with belts. And if you're not a hand loader, it's not a problem at all. But anyway, there it is. That's what happened to the 6.5. But it was ahead of its time.
It sure looks like it.
Yeah.
It looks like a modern cartridge.
It really does. It's so close to that 6.5 PRC that it should have made it, but didn't. Sorry, Remington. Who's next?
Probably 30s. Are we up to 30s yet?
You're skipping the
Oh,
sevens,
sevens.
man. Oh, read this book. All right. If there's a 7mm, which one is this one? What a beauty. One of my favorites. Come on. You know me well enough.
Maybe a 284.
Bingo. 284 Winchester. When did it come out?
1962.
Close. 64.
Dang.
What was the reason? Why did they come up with this thing?
Now, I'm not sure when the 280 came out, but maybe to fight with the 280 Remington.
1958 for the 280 Remington, if I remember right. So you're not too far behind it. So did Winchester say, that darn 280 Remington has taken away some of our sales here. We should probably compete. Well, sort of. Mostly, though, they thought we needed a cartridge that will duplicate 270 Winchester performance in a short action.
That makes sense.
What was the short action? And remember this now, the Model 70 never came out in short action until 1980s. It was always a long action. Yeah. When they chambered it for a 308 or a 243 or something, they just put a block in the magazine.
Oh, really? That's all?
Yeah. They didn't have a short action. So when this came out in 64, they couldn't have thought, well, we need it for our short action models. They didn't have any. So what were they trying to do?
I couldn't tell you.
You know why? You can't tell me?
I haven't read the 7mm book.
You weren't born yet, that's why. They came out with a new line of rifles, 2 of them specifically, and they created this just for those.
Okay.
One was a lever action that used a vertical stack magazine rather than a tubular magazine. They wanted to remain the top dog in the lever action world, and the Savages were kind of chewing on them with their Model 99 system. And the Finns with the Finn Wolf rifle, or did they call it the Finn Light, one of the two, that was a lever action that also had the vertical stack magazine. Winchester said, if they can do it, we got to do it. So they created that, and they said, well, look, the action is pretty much all the same. Instead of doing it manually, let's just set it up to run as an autoloader. So they had an autoloader version. That was called the Model 100. And the 88 was the lever action, if I remember right. So they said, how are we going to make this thing perform like a 270? Let's create a whole new cartridge. And this was one of the few times that a manufacturer didn't borrow from some other existing cartridge, modify it. They started from scratch, and they went with a .500 inch diameter case. They kept the head or the rim to fit the bolts of the day, the same as the 270, 280, 30-06, 308 family. And then they put a pretty sharp shoulder on there. I think that's a 35-degree shoulder and a real straight wall. Notice how they got rid of all the taper?
Almost looks like an Ackley cartridge.
Yeah, getting pretty close. So you've got a short action that's really maximizing case capacity that would fit through rifles of the day like the 70. And then they didn't make it in the 70. That's once again, these guys are not thinking outside the box. Or maybe they're thinking too far outside the box, because just as the 6.5 Remington Magnum, the shorty, it didn't work because of the rifles it was in. Same with this Winchester. In 1964, a flat shooting cartridge like that does what a 270 does, who needs that in a lever action with a heavy trigger that you can't really refine to be really super accurate? Same with an autoloader. Who ever heard of a super accurate autoloader from the 1960s? In general, people who wanted to shoot long and flat and accurately were using bolt action rifles.
Yeah.
So I think that's where their mistake was. It just was made in the wrong rifles. Now, the first person to actually make this thing a real success was Melvin Forbes with his Ultralight Arms Model 20 rifle. A true short action that worked beautifully with this. He designed it around this initially. I actually have the first prototype rifle he made.
No kidding.
Yeah. He was sending it around to the writers to test it out and get some exposure and stuff. And I used it on several hunts and I just fell in love with it. And he sent it back to me again the next year to use for another season. I think the first year I had it, I shot 10 animals with 11 shots.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So it must be a shooter, too.
Tails. Yeah, it was a shooter. It still is a shooter. But he said that is the perfect cartridge for doing what they initially wanted to do. 270 performance out of a shorter barrel, lighter weight rifle, shorter action on all the rest of it. And he was right. This thing will do pretty close to the same ballistic performance as the 270. So it was a heck of a round, but it failed because of those early rifles. And even when Mel came out with it, it was like, this proves what this cartridge can do. Not many people are going to buy a 5-pound rifle,
right?
High dollar. You know, his rifles were not selling for the price of your budget entry rifles. So people say, well, heck with that. I'll just get something in a 7mm 08 and blah, blah, blah. But that's why that one didn't make it, and we really don't even need to compare it to anything else. But I see you've got a few more on the table.
There's a few. I know there's a special one in Ron's heart right there.
What's that?
757.
Oh. See, now look at how much narrower that one is compared to the 284. We're modernizing. You've got your standard, okay, about yay wide, like a 30-06 and a 270. There's your fatter case. Things are changing a little bit. I don't think people were ready for it. But the 757 never was all that popular in the States either.
No.
It was a German cartridge. Do you know of any famous people who used it? Like the 270, you go Jack O'Connell, right?
Ron Spomer.
No, I said famous people.
I don't know of anybody.
You've heard me.
I've never really heard of the 757 until I met you.
Yeah, sorry. Well, there was a gentleman in Africa shooting elephants with a 757.
No kidding.
Bell. You've heard me talk about
I have heard.
Karamojo
Okay,
Bell.
yes, I have.
That's the cartridge he was using to shoot
No
elephants.
kidding.
He shot 800 elephants with a 757 Mauser using a full-patch military bullet, so it's a solid.
Yeah.
And he may have loaded them backwards. Some people have said that he would flip the bullet over so that he had a flat nose on it for straight-line penetration
Right.
into an elephant. I don't know for sure if that's what he did, but he used those and took that many elephants with it with brain shots. He knew exactly where to put it to get a brain. And you don't need a big, heavy super magnum 450, 500, 600 caliber kind of things to do that. So he did it with the little 757. But for more practical uses, that is a great deer cartridge, and it's more than adequate for elk. Shoot your 140 grain bullets up to 175 grain bullets. And you can even step down to, I think you can get a 7mm bullet as light as 100 grains.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit on the varminting side. But look at the two, and they're like, okay, same length. One's fatter. The 284 goes a little bit faster, but that was really the only significant short action style 7mm of the time.
Yeah.
And neither one of them were real popular in the U.S., but then neither was the long one.
That's the one I thought would have took it all. The 280 Remington.
Yeah, that's your 30-06 neck down to 228. Why didn't that one take off?
No clue, especially with the idea they had of trying to match the 270.
Yeah.
The 280 and the 270 Remington, they're pretty close.
Yeah.
Or 270 Winchester.
And that's exactly why Remington came out with this in 1958. How are we going to compete against that 270 Winchester? Well, let's just make it a 7mm. It'll be more efficient because you've got the same powder capacity but a wider base on the bullet so you can drive it faster. And with the 270, you're peaking out with a 150 grain bullet, and plenty of people in those days, you need a heavier bullet for elk or moose. Well, this will do it. You can shoot a 175 grain bullet in this baby. Yeah. So they crank it out in 58, and it just went nowhere. And it was a great cartridge. A lot of people said so, but it didn't take off. Why do you suppose why didn't it take off? You think it was the 7 Rem mag, huh?
That's it. At least, out of 7mm, when it comes to my brain, 7 mag is right there at the top. And I think a lot of people are in that boat. They think 7mm, they think 7 mag.
I think you're right, but it didn't come out until 1962. So this one
true.
had a 4-year head start. Why did it take over?
No clue.
Because it was faster.
Oh, speed.
Bigger, better, hits harder. Yeah, this one replaced or displaced the 264 Win Mag, and this came out before the 300 Win Mag, so they got a leg up on that one. But that sort of leapfrogged over this one, and this one was so close to the 270 that most people said, I've already got a 270. Why do I need this one?
Makes sense.
Yeah. And there were a lot more options in rifles in 270, even though they had the 280 out. It's like, do I want to get a Remington rifle or do I want somebody else's? Everybody makes a 270 Winchester. Not very many were making the 280 Remington. So it had a tough row to hoe.
Gotcha.
But the 7 Rem Mag was different enough that it exploded. What's really funny about that, though, is that essentially this was already out in around 1915.
No kidding.
Yeah, the 375 H&H Magnum at that time, Holland & Holland, came out with a 7mm version of it. It was pretty similar in performance to what became the 7 Rem Mag, but it never really took off, and they dropped it not too many years after they had it going, I think. And then, of course, in the 40s, there was the Weatherby 7mm Magnum, which is, you put the two together, and about the only way you can tell them apart is by the rounded shoulders on the Weatherby. That didn't take over the world because it was a proprietary cartridge, and you had to buy a Weatherby rifle and all the rest of it. Yeah, there's all kinds of them out there. There was a the Sharpened Heart 7mm. It's very similar to that. There was a 280 Ross that was similar to the 280 Remington, or what became the 280 Remington. Just a whole bunch of them. I covered all of those in my book, and there are so many in here I can't even remember all the details on them. I'm at that stage in life where my hard drive is full.
I don't believe it.
In order to shove another fact in, I have to extract one from the other side and throw it away. So I forget a lot of these numbers. But yeah, you were on it. This is the 7 Rem Mag that took over the 7mm field. From 1962 on, that was the 7mm.
Right.
And, really, it still hasn't been displaced.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It's still, I think, one of the best 7mm out there.
Yeah, and there are a lot of them. So,
A whole book's worth.
but I am really sorry to see that the 284 Winchester did not reach its full potential. That is a cartridge that should have been a lot more popular than it has been. Too bad, buddy. I still love you. Who's next?
All right. I actually know this one, so I'm going to see if you do.
Oh, gosh. That's a hard one. I mean, you've got that long, sloping, tapered, hardly any shoulder sloping kind of a thing. It blends in with all the other cartridges. How could anybody tell it apart? That is so distinctive. It's the 300 H&H Magnum.
That's right.
And it's the only one that looks like that. I always say it looks like a missile from the 1960s in our early Mercury launch things. It just has that look to it. That was the first 30 caliber Magnum, I think, anywhere, certainly in the U.S. Winchester loaded it. Winchester chambered for it. And it was the go-to over the 30-06. If you wanted a bigger 30, you went to that. And that's what John Nosler was using when he infamously shot that moose about 5 or 6 times and had the bullets exploding on the muddy hide or something like that. And decided, I've got the horsepower, I just need a bullet that can handle it. And he came up with the partition bullet. That was kind of the beginning of all this new premium bullet stuff. So what do you know about the H&H other than you know the name of it and there it is?
Well, the reason I know what it is because it was the first 30. And I love 30s.
Ah, you're the 30 man. That's right. You got a 300 Win Mag's your favorite?
PRC.
You PRC now. Mm-hmm.
But I do have a Win Mag, and I love it too.
Okay. Well, this one is surprisingly close in performance to the 300 Win Mag.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Despite the taper. What a lot of guys like about this incredible taper and that slope is that it feeds like butter. Everybody says it's like greased hot butter when
I
it
could
feeds.
see that.
And it certainly does. I mean, I've not had any 300 Win Mags jam up on me, or even any 300 WSMs, which a lot of guys say is just too sharp of a shoulder. And I've never had one plug up. I can always cycle the buggers. But this guy does just cycles beautifully. We took it to Africa a few years ago, about 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago, and took all sorts of things with it, and I did kind of fall in love with the darn thing. A lot of it has to do with nostalgia. I'm sort of becoming that guy. I like the not just the 6mm Remington, but that 757.
Yeah.
And then this guy, just all those old timers, I just kind of have a soft spot for them. Can't figure out why, guys. But no, that is a cartridge that started off to be really hot, but the reason it became old-fashioned and people are pretty much ignoring it now is because of the 300 Win Mag. Pop him up there. And guess who gave birth to the 300 Win Mag? Yeah. They just took a taper out of it, gave it a sharper shoulder, set it back a little bit so it's going to work in your 30-06 length actions rather than the full Magnum length. Bingo, that's simple.
There it is.
Yeah, chambered in the Win Mag and the Remingtons and Savages and everybody else out there. So that's the new straight-walled, sharper-shouldered 300 H&H.
Yeah.
It's that simple. But that's what buried it. And then, of course, after that, all kinds of other 30s came along to finish the job. But I see you've got a lot more 30s on the table.
There is. There's a couple more.
What is that one?
300 Savage.
The 300 Savage? That is a cartridge that should have really been something, but what happened to that one?
Now, if I had to guess, I don't know.
You guessed right.
A 308.
And guess who gave birth to the 308?
757.
300 Savage.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, the 300 Savage been around since, gosh, when did they come out with that thing? In 1920? It was not 1915, but I would guess it's probably in the 20s. Savage came out with that thing thinking this is going to work really well in our 99 lever action, and it did. And it was the inspiration for what became the 308. So the military after World War II was saying, how do we lighten the load, shipping all this ammo into the field? We don't really need a 30-06. It's more than we need.
Yeah.
Let's make it smaller. But we still need to be able to reach this far, penetrate the helmet of the enemies,
right,
and all certain parameters. Start the development process. It was the T65, I think is what they called it. What are we going to come up with? And somebody said, 300 Savage already does what you want. And they looked at it and rejected it. I don't know exactly why. But the upshot is they got the 308, which looks so similar to it. You almost wonder, why bother? Why didn't you just grab that Savage? Anyone out there who knows military history, write in and let us know exactly why that happened. But the upshot is you end up with a 308 that was given higher chamber pressures. That's going to help with your velocity. Probably have a little more sloped shoulder on it, so your feet a little more reliably. Pretty sharp shoulder on this guy, and a little bit longer neck, so you're not going to have issues with maybe the bullet canting or something. In rough handling, might have been it. But the guys who were shooting in the Savage 99, that old 300 Savage, they knew that it was just one heck of a slick performer and deadly on deer and elk. But once that 308 Winchester popped up in 52, the 300 Savage began to slide. Of course, prior to that, it was sliding pretty quickly because of the 30-06. Even though it was a lot longer cartridge, so many hunters who'd gone to war and learned how to work with whatever they gave them, which was the Springfield and then the Garand, they just said 30-06, what the hey, it's make it easy. And there's all kinds of ammunition lying around, excess military brass and everything else. So that, even though it was a full-length action, it was not the short action big deal. You didn't really need them back in those days. As we mentioned, Winchester didn't even have a short action option, so why not just go with the 30-06? It's dead simple. But military, inspired a military, used by military snipers. Really, the H&H is the only one that didn't have any kind of a military connection that I ever knew of. So... Yeah, it's interesting, but those 30s just became the standard. You know why? I think it was, I see you got this guy lying here. That was the first 30 caliber U.S. military round, the 30-40 Krag, K-R-A-G, which is a Norwegian name. They developed the darn thing. We were using the 30-40 Krag rifle, and that was prior to the 30-06 showing up. That was our 30. And the 30-40 was a 30 caliber bullet with 40 grains of smokeless powder. 1892, the military came out with it. Smokeless powder at the time was a new deal, and they popped that one up. They really didn't start getting actual rifles and ammo onto the market or even into the hands of the soldiers until about 1894. Well, what came out around that same time in a 30 caliber?
The 300 H&H.
No, that didn't. No.
I'm not good with numbers.
1894.
Oh, Model 94 3030.
Yes, there you go, the 3030. And that was popular with deer hunters because it was in a lever action. And back in those days, for hunting, lever action, that's the hunting rifle. Bolt actions, that's a military rifle. So you had a bolt action, clunky old Krag military rifle with a 26-inch barrel or something. And even if you sporterized it, but at the time they didn't even have sporterized ones. They were all military. But the Model 94, that was familiar. It was a Winchester lever action. So the 3030 became the deer hunter's cartridge. And the 3040 Krag, even though it was a little bit faster, it fizzled out real fast after
1902. 3.
30 caliber, think 30 caliber.
1904.
The 3004. Close, but no survive. Let's go back to that 30-06, shall we?
Oh, maybe a 30-06.
That's a great guy. Cut and jump right to where he says 30-06. Now, in 1906, the military said the 30-40 Krag is lagging behind. The Germans had the 8x57. The Spanish were shooting at 757 Mauser, and we just were kind of at the bottom of the heap for military rounds. So they said, hey, we need something new. They looked at that 757. Let's lengthen it a little bit. Let's make it a 30 caliber so we can use the bullets from the 30s we've got or whatever. All right, bingo. They came up with the 30-06. Gotcha. First, it was the 30-03 with a 220 grain round nose bullet. Too slow, too stodgy. Spire points were just coming into favor. They're beginning to appreciate ballistic efficiency. Mm-hmm. Let's go with 150 grain spire point, and that became the military round used in World War II, World War I. Yep, they were using it in World War I already too. So the 303 only lasted for 3 years before they made it the 06.
Okay.
And it was called 06 because 0 used to mean 0.
Right.
1906. So there you go, 30-06. All right, anybody else on the table you want to talk about a cartridge that should have made it but never quite did?
Well, we like the short fats, so let's see what that is.
Oh, that's short and fat. I know what that is. Do you know what that is?
Maybe a 325 Wisdom.
You got it, buddy. How come you know that one?
Because I like short fats.
Uh-huh.
And really the only reason I know what it is I went into a sporting goods store not too long ago and seen a box of it on the shelf.
And you said,
and I said, what is that?
Yeah, well, I can't blame him because that one didn't last long. You go back to the Wisdoms, as you guys call them, the WSM cartridge, Winchester Short Magnum.
Yep.
When did those start? Do you have any idea?
I don't, actually.
The year 2000.
Okay.
I think Winchester said, you know what? We've got a whole new century coming up. We really need to change things up. Got the standard cartridges and all kinds of magnums and things, but what could we do to really to change things? Short, fat, really fat. They started off with that 284 Winchester as the first short magnum, but they didn't really advertise it that way. Mm-hmm. So now they're thinking, maybe we should be pushing this short, fat idea, because by then they'd had those PPC cartridges for bench rest shooting. That was based on the 220 Russian. It was a short little, pretty fat cartridge. So they had this basic configuration of short and fat. Mm-hmm. Instead of having length for your powder capacity, you went with fatter. All right, let's do that, but we got to make it big enough to be a big game cartridge. They came up with the 300 WSM.
Yeah. And
within a few months, I think it was, didn't even wait a year, they had the 270 version of it and then the 7mm version of it. And then later the 325. Which ends up being the most efficient of the bunch because anytime you've got a powder supply of any size and you put a wider bullet on it, you take more of that energy and drive it into the bullet because it's got a bigger base to get. Yeah, I don't know exactly how to explain it, but it's that size that most people don't know. It's once you get over 30 in this country, it's like, they've heard of 35s and 375s, but ouch, those probably hurt and that kind of stuff. The 8 millimeters, 323 is the diameter of this bullet.
Speaking of 8 millimeter.
There you go. There's an 8 millimeter. Which one is that?
The 8 millimeter Rem Mag.
Yeah, the 8 millimeter. Now, what can you tell me about the 8 millimeter Remington Magnum?
Yeah, I couldn't tell you a whole lot other than it's a belted Magnum, so it reminds me a lot of maybe a 300 Win Mag or your 7 Rem Mag.
Okay, we'll put one of those up there and then tell me what you think.
It's a lot longer.
Yep. So what does that length tell you?
Oh, maybe a 375 H&H Mag.
Yeah. So you've got your full length. The 375 H&H was used for the 7 Rem Mag and the 300 and all the rest of them, but they pushed it back so that there would be a 30-06 length to fit most rifles. The full Magnum length, a little bit longer, so you had some problems getting it to work in some rifles. But with the 8 millimeter, Remington said, we really need some horsepower in a bigger diameter bullet that a lot of the moose and elk hunters who want something bigger, kind of the Elmer Keith crowd, are going to want. And they banked on that one. They thought that was really going to work. Exactly why they thought 8 millimeter would catch on with Americans in the 80s and 90s, I think it came out sometime in the 80s, never really worked. Because the only other 8 that I ever heard of was the 8 millimeter Mauser, the German cartridge, and .323 bullet. Who ever saw any of those? So it never really made it. It's a heck of a performer ballistically.
It looks like it'd be a very good cartridge. It looks like just a big 300 Win Mag.
Right.
And a lot of people like bigger, right? Bigger is better.
Right. But,
so I don't know why it would never take off.
Well, more people like less recoil. And that's a big part of the reason. That plus it was this Super Magnum and it was more expensive. And it's like, do we really need that? And most hunters are saying, look, I'm shooting deer and elk. I can get by with a 300 Win Mag will take anything.
That's right.
Including moose and all the rest of it. So why mess around with this 8 millimeter? So it never really took off. But I think Winchester said, we've got this short, fat case. We know we can be really efficient. And there are some people out there who want the bigger bullets. Why don't we give it to them? Yeah, when we were not going to make the mistake of calling it 8 millimeter, which was kind of odd because by then you had your 6 millimeters and the 7 millimeters were doing really well. But boy, beyond that, the millimeter designation wasn't too popular until that Creedmoor came out.
Right.
The 6.5 Creedmoor, but that wasn't an MM either. When did the millimeter suddenly take over? Because nowadays you got a 6.8 millimeter, you got a 6.5 millimeter. It's all millimeters now. So at any rate, back then, we didn't like the MMs too much, even though we had them on our 7s and we loved those. At any rate, Winchester said, we're not going millimeter here. This is all American. We're going 325. Wait a minute. Didn't I say that bullet was a...
Oh, 323.
323. And they called it a 325. Now, why was that?
Because maybe they had the same thing I have and they can't have the AC at 73. It's got to be at 75.
Good, nice round number, man. Well, what's a 3? But look what the 243 Winchester did for them.
Oh, I guess.
They went with a 3 on that one, and they succeeded big time. What's going on? Oh, that's a 22. No, that's the 243. Yeah. So, I don't know. I think they just wanted to stick with American numbers and stuff and not go 7s. Because, think about it. What did Winchester have that was a millimeter? Nothing. It was always Remington.
Yeah, I guess that's true, huh?
Yeah, 6 millimeter Remington, 7 millimeter Remington, 264 Win Mag down at 6.5. And the 30s, they didn't call them a 7.62. Only NATO did that. That started all that stuff. So, yeah, it was resisting the European designations in cartridges. Can't blame them. At any rate, you've got a pretty nice, efficient little cartridge here that, as I said, is more efficient in using the energy in that powder supply to drive a pretty nice heavy bullet. I've used it on caribou and moose and elk. Can't remember if I did a bear with it or not, but I hunted with it a fair amount back when I was doing a TV show sponsored by Winchester Ammunition. And it really was efficient. I never enjoyed it as much as the 270 WSM. That was always my favorite. But I think that's mostly because I've always been a smaller caliber, faster bullet kind of guy.
Yeah.
Can't say that it's the right choice because this sure knocks them down nicely.
Well, I'm sure it does.
Yeah. And I don't own one to this day. I've compromised between the two, and I've gone to a 300 WSM. Short action, lightweight rifle, not too much recoil, and that's my elk rifle that I never use anymore because I have a 757 now. I don't know, guys. I play around with all kinds of stuff. But yeah, the 325, on ballistic terms, it deserves to be popular. If you want to shoot a medium bore, you get a 35 Whelen size sort of a cartridge, somewhere in that category, this is a good one to roll with because you can get it in that shorter, lighter, faster little action rifle. But like the 8mm Rem Mag, I think it's just never going to really shine. So what did we come up with as the final? We got a 325 that should have done better than it did, but didn't. We had the 300 Savage, which is a heck of a 30 caliber that never really took off all that much. We had that goofy little 6.5 short, ahead of its time, should have been really popular Remington Magnum. We had the 257 Roberts, which for quite a while was really popular, the most popular 25 in the country. But that one has faded away. And then the 6mm Remington, a.k.a. 244 Remington, which got beat out by the 243 Winchester. So we'll pull him off the table. And then we'll drop down into that crazy little nobody's ever heard of 225 Winchester, competing against the 22-250 and failing in that competition rather quickly.
Ron, you forgot your favorite one.
No. My 757 Mauser?
Your 284.
Oh, my 284. The 284, which was Ron's favorite until he slowed down, backed up, and went to the old nostalgic 757 Mauser. I'm sorry, guys, but the reason I love this cartridge is because I had that single-shot rifle built in it. And the rifle is so sweet that I just can't resist using it on everything all the time now. So right now, I'm in love with the 757, even though the 284 Winchester is the better cartridge. There you have it, folks. Centerfire cartridges that should have made it big time, but failed.
Bummer. They should have done it.
Yeah. Help them out, guys. Go out, find a used rifle chamber for any one of these or all of them, and let us know what you think. I have yet to meet anybody who shot any of these, except for the 225, and said, boy, that's a dog of a cartridge. I don't like it at all. They all work like most cartridges do. Use the right bullet, hunt honest, aim straight, and you'll do just fine. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time. Say
Hunt
goodbye.
honest and shoot straight.
Bingo.
8mm. The 8mm Rem Mag.
Cut and go to that part.